You're watching one of my favourite clips from There Will Be Blood. This entire opening sequence is filmed without any dialogue, which makes it a perfect introduction for today's video. Just watch and pay attention to what you can see. What do you learn about the main character? What sort of world do you think we're in? I don't know about you, but I think it feels very lonely. The character feels isolated, and yet there's a determination about him, even an excitement at times. Now, all this is being communicated not verbally, but visually through the mise en scene, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So let's start off with the literal meaning. Mise en scene is a French word, and it comes from theatre, and it literally means staging, quite simply the aesthetic of all the things that make up the scene, the way it looks. So the question we've got to ask then is, where is all this information? What do we look out for? Let's start with the most obvious aspect, the character. What are they wearing? Does their costume reflect their personality, their ideology? What is their hair and makeup like? Slick and sophisticated, or disheveled and chaotic? The character's look is the first hint of how we're meant to feel about them before they've even said a word. It can tell you where they've been, what they value, whether or not we should trust them. Something that's particularly useful to look out for with character mise en scene is juxtaposition between characters, which might represent lawfulness against recklessness.
Have a nice day.
Good against evil.
Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son.
Or perhaps even style against substance.
You know I couldn't invite you. I had to pretend to be plastic.
Buddy, you're not pretending anymore. You're plastic.
These contrasting themes, what we call binary oppositions, play a huge role in storytelling by allowing the audience to quickly establish ideas by showing their polar opposite. Sometimes costume can even be a plot device. In The Village, we have the blind protagonist who wears a warm, natural, yellow costume, which contrasts with the monster's red. But the fact that she's blind and isn't even aware of just how much she stands out in the forest makes her feel all the more vulnerable. Of course the monster can see her. She's an easy target. Next up in mise en scene, we can talk about props. Items which tell you about the world or the character. Look at the shape and form of the various characters' wands in the Harry Potter series. How do they represent the character's personality? Or how about their animal companions? What does this tell you compared to this?
Turn this stupid fat rat yellow.
In The Lord of the Rings, the props were key to creating a world that appeared to have a rich history and culture.
Richard Taylor's philosophy was always ground us in reality. We want gritty realism. We're making a historical film, we're not making a fantasy film.
Props and gadgets are particularly important in science fiction and fantasy because it makes the world feel believable and exciting for the audience, often paving the way for actual technology, even if it seems ludicrous at the time. Next up, we have the largest aspect of mise en scene in terms of scale, the set. And I'm not just talking about where the scene is taking place, but also how it's been dressed. Are we in a big empty space or a claustrophobic one? Are we in an actual jungle or an urban one? And within that space, is it lavishly decorated or sparse? Is it immaculately clean or cluttered?
Quiet!
Every one of these decisions is intentional, and it might be the producer trying to tell you something. For instance, the placement of the robot in Ex Machina in a windowless, soulless, cramped room, which contrasts with the expansive forest that the human characters inhabit, representing their comparative freedom. In The Shining, Kubrick intentionally shot the ominous hotel so that the endless corridors felt like a labyrinth for the audience, and they're left unable to orientate themselves. You feel as trapped as the characters in this film. So as you can see, a set isn't just a convenient place to shoot, it's often reflective of the themes in the narrative. And when they work together, like the overcrowded rough streets of New York in Taxi Driver,
all the animals come out at night.
we have a far richer narrative experience. And you probably noticed binary oppositions come into play here too. It's no coincidence that in Star Wars, the good characters often tend to be shown in natural environments, whereas bad characters are shown in dark industrial, man-made settings. Finally, with mise en scene, we can be looking out for the lighting. An element that deserves its own video in the future, but for now, is it natural or stylized? Bright or dim? Warm or cold? Sometimes the lighting of a film can be used to differentiate between places, such as the real world and the artificial one in The Matrix. But it's most commonly used to set a tone for the scene. Used properly, red can feel romantic or threatening. Blue can also feel romantic, but it can also be as cold as death. The combination of these aspects, costume, hair, makeup, set, lighting, they make up the film's aesthetic, and I think it's the film's aesthetic which is the single most important thing in allowing the audience to believe in this world for 2 hours. For this reason, genres such as fantasy and science fiction films are a great starting point for analysing mise en scene, because they're often fairly obvious in what they're trying to say. Likewise, films of the German Expressionism era are very explicit in how visuals are attempting to fix meaning. But other genres, like historical dramas, are more subtle and require a bit more investigation to see what's right in front of you. So where should you start if you're analysing mise en scene in film? Firstly, just say what you see. Literally, write it down if you have to. Describe how everything looks, every single detail, and consider those categories: costume, hair, makeup, set, lighting, and props. What can you see and how does it look? Next up, consider the purpose of the scene. Is this our first time meeting the character? Then why are we here of all places? Is this the triumphant finale?
And Hulk. Smash.
Finally, try and get in the head of the producer. Why did they make it look like that? How does the aesthetic help communicate the purpose of the scene? Sometimes what I find useful is to ask students, well, what if it didn't look like that? What if it looked like something else? Would this scene from Alien have been as effective without the water dripping from random chains hanging from the roof? Consider the last of the original Star Wars films. Is it a coincidence that Luke, our hero, is wearing black, like Vader, during his greatest trial of temptation to the dark side? Is it a coincidence that the lighting is so low? Learn to pay attention to these tiny details and I can guarantee you will upgrade your analysis. So there you have it, guys. That's mise en scene. It's one of the key areas that we look at along with camera work, editing and sound, which I'm going to have more videos on my channel if you want to check those out. As for right now, if you want to go straight into an analysis of cinematography, you can watch that video right here, or you can watch a little bit about semiotics, which is exactly how we derive meanings from things like mise en scene and camera work. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.